We've reached kind of the middle of the book of Revelation in some ways. So briefly, let's kind of recap Revelation 1 through 11. We finished chapter 11 last week. It was written specifically to those 7 churches in what's today modern Turkey, Western Turkey. Those 7 churches were very representative, of course, of all churches, and we find ourselves maybe being partly one church and partly of another. But those churches were kind of right in the middle of the greatest area of persecution in the first century, and that persecution was coming from the Roman government, but it's specifically that priesthood of people who were working for the Roman government, trying to force people to bow down and worship the emperor. So they were kind of right in the middle of the worst persecution. They've been undergoing persecution for a number of years, and the book is primarily written to them. We've talked about looking at it through first century glasses, and I don't think there's any way to understand the book unless you do that. Put yourselves in their place in the first century and what they were undergoing, and understanding from their viewpoint what John is writing to them. Because those Christians living in the first century understood this apocalyptic type of literature. Now, the Roman government wouldn't understand it, and other religions really wouldn't understand it, but the Christians would understand it. So in a way, it was written in a code. And of course, it was purposefully done in that way. And so, those congregations are written to individually, in a sense, as far as being addressed, and their strengths and weaknesses, so forth, are addressed. And then he moves into chapters 4 and 5, the worship of God the Father, chapter 4, and God the Son in chapter 5. And then we move in, chapters 6 through 11, the revealing of what's in the immediate future for those people living in the first century. Will this go on forever? Will the Roman government continue to persecute us, continue to kill Christians and imprison Christians? And where is God in all of this? They wanted those questions answered, and that's primarily what the book of Revelation answers. It answers those questions. And so chapters 6 through 11, through a number of signs, through, there were trumpets and angels and seals, and all of that was part of the revealing of the fact that God was behind all of this. God knows exactly what's happening. God is going to take care of you. He's going to take care of the situation. And no, the persecution is not going to go on forever. It is going to end because God is all-powerful. And He is going to bring down, destroy, bring to nothing your persecutors. And that's the primary message of Revelation chapter 6 through 11. And the people were represented in a number of ways, and their antagonists were represented in a number of ways. Well, now we go to Revelation chapter 12. And chapter 12 through chapter 20 is in some ways very, very similar to chapters 6 through 11. The symbols are different in many cases. The imagery is much more intense in chapters 12 through 20. Now, we saw some pretty intense imagery in chapters 6 through 11, but the imagery really gets much, much more dramatic, much more intense, and the action of these next 13 chapters, the action is much more quick, is much faster than what we saw in 6 through 11. But the main characters are exactly the same. Satan is behind all the persecution, but he's using the Roman government and these priests to persecute people, and those people are put in the form of great dragons and different types of beasts, but it's the same basic characters. And the message is still the same, though. Be thou faithful unto death, and you'll receive the crown of life. God's in control. God knows what you're going through. And so with that in mind, we go to Revelation chapter 12. And I'm sure you know this, but Revelation chapter 12 is one of the most abused chapters in all of Revelation. Because so much of it is literalized in ways that honestly, are ridiculous. It's a spiritual warfare, and that's what it's been all along. It's a spiritual warfare. Ultimately, God versus Satan, but we see how it's kind of played out through time, especially in the 1st and 2nd century. Revelation chapter 12, we're only going to have to look at the first 6 verses because we're introduced to new symbols, same characters. It's like they have different masks on. It's just like we're seeing this great drama presented, and we've seen the drama in chapter 6 through 11 and seen the faces of the people involved, and now in the next few chapters we see the same people involved, but they're portrayed differently. Just like you might see in a big panorama or a big mural on a wall. And that's what we see in Revelation chapter 12. Notice what happens at verse 1. Remember how chapter 11 had ended, though. You know, chapter 11 ended with the fact that the Christians would be able to overcome anything Satan throws at them, hurls at them. Now he says, now a great sign appeared in heaven. This is the great sign. And remember, think of this as a great panorama displayed for you, a great big mural. A woman, this is what he sees, clothed with the sun. Literally, how would a woman literally, physically be clothed with the sun? Well, she couldn't be clothed with the sun literally. But he's trying to portray something about the woman. She's clothed with the sun, with the moon under her feet. Literally under her feet? Woman with the great big moon under her feet? No, this isn't literal. This isn't physical. And on her head a garland of 12 stars. Now we're introduced to, we might say, the first new character. John sees this sign, sees this miraculous wonder. Whom did the woman represent? And if you misunderstand who the woman is, then the next 13 chapters you'll misunderstand everything that happens. So it's critical in identifying accurately and correctly who the woman is. Because of that, many people believe this is way in the future, that there's going to be some woman, literal physical woman, that gives birth to a literal physical child. Okay? If you've watched the movies that came out several years ago, The Omen, The Omen and The Omen 1, The Omen 2 were both based somewhat on chapters 12 and 13 of Revelation. And got it, I mean, you couldn't have tried any harder to misunderstand. The whole movie, both of them, completely, totally misunderstood everything in Revelation chapter 12 and 13. But it made a lot of money, so I guess if that's what they were wanting, that's okay, because that's what they did. So who is the woman? Some have thought the woman was the church. Well, of course, the problem with that, as you see in verse 2, this woman is with child, and she cries out in labor and in pain to give birth, and she gives birth to Christ. Well, the church, of course, didn't give birth to Christ, did she? So it couldn't be the church that is depicted as the woman. And of course, some people say it was the Virgin Mary. And of course, the Virgin Mary physically, literally gave birth to Jesus. But the Virgin Mary is not someone we worship. She is not part of our redemption. She's not one who died for us. So while she certainly played an integral part, she did not play an important part in those people in the first century. So again, not talking about the Virgin Mary, his physical mother. Who did, if we go way, way, way back in time, who eventually gave birth to the Messiah? Through whom did the Messiah come? Well, we know that, don't we? Came through those faithful Jews, didn't they? God's people, right? That goes way, way, way back in prophecy. We don't want to take a lot of time, but let's read one passage. And which one would be the best? Let's go back to Micah chapter 5. And let's read verses 2 and 3. Let's go back. Take a while to find Micah. One of the minor prophets. Micah, and let's look at chapter 5, Micah chapter 5. And notice verses 2 and 3. And notice how similar the language is to Revelation chapter 12. Micah chapter 5. This is one of the prophecies of the coming of the Messiah. Micah chapter 5, beginning in verse 2. But you, Bethlehem Ephrathah, and that's the Bethlehem where Jesus was born. That's the same one. Though you are little among the thousands of Judah, yet out of you shall come forth to me the one to be ruler in Israel, whose goings forth are from of old, from everlasting. Therefore he shall give them up until the time that she who is in labor has given birth. Then the remnant of his brethren shall return to the children of Israel. There's a direct prophecy about the Messiah. He was going to be ruler of Israel. And it's pictured as what? The birth process. But through whom was the Messiah going to come? Again, there's the whole lineage of David and how the Messiah is going to come through that faithful remnant. It was always the faithful remnant. And I'm thinking about having that as my Sunday sermon next Sunday morning, is about that faithful remnant and how the Messiah came through that faithful remnant and how time after time after time it looked like Satan had defeated God. And I think it's a very interesting lesson. So here we have Jesus coming through that faithful lineage, those faithful Jewish people throughout time. And then he was born. Where? In Bethlehem, just like Micah chapter 5 verse 2 says he was going to be born. The ruler of Israel. So now, going back to Revelation 12, we see this woman, and again, she is represented in verse 2, or verse 1 and 2, as being the one that brings forth the child. Those faithful people of Israel, Old Testament Israel, who gave birth to the Messiah. Because it says that in verse 2, then being with child, she cried out in labor and in pain to give birth. And if you go back to Micah chapter 4, in the prior verse, in the prior chapter, it gives that same type of description of the Messiah. How the Messiah would come forth in pain and labor. And of course he did, didn't he? When you think about that whole plan of redemption that God put into place and all the things that had to happen just like they happened for the Messiah to come through that lineage. It's really an amazing, amazing series of events to look at. And you certainly see God behind all of those events. So the Messiah was born through that faithful Jewish group. Of course, down the rest of this chapter, that group of people that is represented by the woman increases somewhat. Here, he's specifically talking about how the woman came through that old covenant remnant that the minor prophets talked about over and over and over again. That faithful remnant, that faithful remnant, that faithful remnant. Because there had to be a faithful remnant for the Messiah to come through. And then he did. He came through that faithful remnant. And part of the reason we have Matthew chapter 1 and what? Luke chapter 3, those genealogies, is to see how the Messiah came through that faithful remnant. And all those generations. And sometimes we think, why are all those genealogies in there? They are there for a purpose. They show the Messiah being born and coming through that faithful remnant, through generation after generation after generation. That's why those genealogies are so very, very important. And they're important for tonight's lesson. So we see the woman, she's clothed with the sun, and we see the brightness of the sun and what she has done. She has a garland of 12 stars, and we've talked about how that number 12 often represents God's people. It has done that many times in the book of Revelation, that number 12. 12, we talked about the 24 elders being two sections of 12. The people from the Old Testament, people from the New, God's people, the faithful people, and again, talking about that faithful remnant. So, The woman's with child. She cries out in labor and in pain to give birth. So now we see the woman and who she is and her significance. Now there's another sign. Okay, that's a good sign. Now there's a not so good sign in verse 3. And another sign appeared in heaven. Okay, now notice verse 1 of this chapter says, now a great sign appeared in heaven. And another sign appeared in heaven. It's not going to say that the woman was in heaven or what he's going to see is in heaven, but that's the sign is in heaven. He sees it coming from heaven. Again, not literally or physically in heaven, because heaven's a spiritual place. So there's another sign that appears in heaven. Behold, a great fiery red dragon, having 7 heads and 10 horns, and 7 diadems on his head. And all of those are important. They're representative of whoever this is he's talking about. Well, great fiery red. What does red usually mean? What's it symbolic of? Well, we've already seen in this book it's symbolic of bloodshed and war, symbolic of anger. You know, when somebody turns red, it's either because they're embarrassed or because they're very angry. I don't think this dragon's embarrassed about anything. This dragon is angry. We have a case of an angry dragon. A real dragon. Now this is one place where hardly any of the people that literalize the book will actually literalize the dragon. So I'm glad they don't actually literalize the dragon. I think if they would do that, they would realize that nobody would ever listen to them again the rest of their lives. So this dragon is fierce, it's angry, it has bloodshed associated with it. What else? It has 7 heads and 10 horns and 7 diadems. 7 heads. This is some dragon, isn't it? And when we think about heads, head, of course, is where we have our thinking and how we make decisions and knowing these things. So what this is has a lot of knowledge. It has a lot of cunning. It is crafty. We know where we're going with this, don't we? Of course, the Bible, we don't have to guess who the dragon is. The Bible tells us specifically who the dragon is, and of course that's Satan. And Satan does have a lot of knowledge. Not infinite knowledge like God, but he has a lot of knowledge. But in particular, he has a lot of cunning. He's crafty. He's deceitful, right? The Bible says he deceived Eve, and he's deceived countless people throughout time. And he still does. He still deceives people because he's so cunning and crafty and makes things that are evil look so good. And he's very, very good at that. He has 10 horns. And you go back to the Old Testament, and the Jewish people knew what horns represented. When you look at symbolic language in the Old Testament, horns almost always signified power. And I always think about the rhinoceros and the horn. You know, the rhinoceros horn is supposed to be very, very powerful. A lot of religions in Africa consider that horn to be very, very powerful. Well, horns have always signified great power. Well, Satan has enormous power. He has a lot of demons that work for him. But even more important than that, he has a great deal of influence, right? Has a huge amount of influence in the world, and he's always had a lot of influence. So we see another characteristic of Satan. And he has 7 diadems, or 7 crowns on his head. So there's something else about Satan that is depicted here. And this is the word that usually designates authority. This is a kingly crown. This is not the crown of victory, the Stephanos that we talked about, I think, last week or the week before. This is the one that kings and monarchs and rulers would wear. This is the one of authority. Satan has a lot of authority. He doesn't have any over Christians, but he has authority over all the wickedness and evil in the world. He's behind it all. So here we have Satan, who is depicted as powerful and wicked and angry and having a lot of authority, and he's very cunning and he's very crafty, and that's how he's depicted in these verses. So what does he do? Verse 4. His tail, which a dragon, as when we think about a dragon, we think about something that has a very powerful tail, drew a third of the stars of heaven and threw them to the earth. Why was he doing that? Literally, do we see a literal dragon with a great big tail and knocking stars out of heaven? Of course not. That's not literal. It's not a physical description. It's still showing his great power. It's still showing how powerful Satan is. And of course, Satan is going to use everything at his disposal because he's cunning and crafty and deceitful. And he's going to be able to use powers on God's people. But hasn't he always done that? I mean, he's always done that since the beginning. Think about how cunning and crafty he was in the Garden of Eden. He didn't have a lot to work with. He didn't have a lot of people to deceive. There were 2. He didn't have a lot available to deceive Eve, but he found something that would do it. So again, we see how cunning and crafty, deceitful Satan is. So he threw them to the earth, and the dragon stood before the woman who was ready to give birth to devour her child as soon as it was born. Here we see what the dragon is really after. He's after Christ. Waiting to kill the Messiah. And isn't that what almost happened? King Herod, right? Going back, what? Luke 2, something like that? Or Luke 3? I think it's Luke 2. Where Herod, Satan was behind it, tried to kill the Messiah. All those male children. Herod wanted to make sure that he didn't know which one Jesus was, but he wanted to make sure that he could somehow make sure he was dead. He says, okay, I'll just kill them all that's under 2 years of age. That'll get him. But Satan was behind that, and that's what Satan is depicted as doing there in verse 5. Or in verse 4. She was ready to give birth, so to devour her child as soon as it was born. And that's exactly what Satan was wanting to do. And he almost accomplished it. Satan thought, this is going to be it. See, Satan isn't all-knowing. Satan thought that Herod was going to be able to destroy the Messiah. End of story. Satan didn't know that the Messiah was going to be able to live through that. Satan didn't have any idea. Satan is wrong a lot of times about things. Satan thought sure he was going to be able to tempt Jesus in the wilderness in Matthew 4, and he'd win. Didn't work. Satan didn't know that. Satan thought he could do it. Satan wouldn't have even tried if he knew he had been unsuccessful. So Satan isn't all-knowing like the Father. Satan can't predict the future like God can. He doesn't know the future. But anyway, so what happened? Satan tries to have the child, Christ, killed. But it doesn't work. Notice verse 5. She bore a male child, the Messiah, who was to rule all nations with a rod of iron. Before we go any further, let's go back. That's the fulfillment, of course, of prophecy. Psalm chapter 2. Let's go back to Psalm 2 real quick and read just a verse or two. Psalms, verse 2. Or Psalms 2, and let's begin reading in about verse 6. Psalms 2, verse 6. This whole psalm is a psalm about the coming of the Messiah. Psalm 2, verse 6. Yet I have set my king on my holy hill of Zion. I will declare to the decree, the Lord has said to me, you are my son, today I have begotten you. So we don't have to, we don't misunderstand. Those are the words God said about Jesus. Ask of me, and I will give you the nations for your inheritance, and the ends of the earth for your possession. Now here's what's quoted in Revelation. You shall break them with a rod of iron. You shall dash them to pieces like a potter's vessel. And so here we go in Revelation chapter 12 with almost the identical language. He bore a male child to rule all nations with a rod of iron. So again, we know exactly who he's talking about. John's talking about the birth of Christ, and that he would rule all the nations with a rod of iron. And maybe in particular, at least from what I could find out, this rod of iron is like what many shepherds would use. They would have a staff, but they would put, a wooden staff, but they would encase it in iron. Of course, iron was well known in the first century. That's how the Romans were able to conquer so many countries, was because they used iron so much. Well, it was available to people in the first century. So he was to rule all nations with a rod of iron. Now notice what's next. And her child was caught up to God and His throne. Here's something else Satan didn't know was going to happen. When Satan got Judas to betray Jesus and went through the mock trial and Jesus died on the cross, what did Satan do? He yelled, "I have won." Satan was positive that was the end of the story. Satan didn't know Jesus was going to be resurrected. He hadn't had any idea. He thought he had won. We would almost see him jumping up and down for joy. He'd been trying to thwart God's plan of redemption for centuries, and he thought, now I've finally done it. I have gotten the Messiah killed. But it didn't work. 3 days later, the Messiah is resurrected from the grave. And in less than 2 months, he does what? Ascends up to God and His throne. Satan would never be able to touch Christ in any way. So Satan lost that. And that was his big, big loss. There wasn't anything more Satan could do to Christ. Nothing. But Satan didn't know that. Then finally, and this is as far as we'll go, then the woman fled into the wilderness where she has a place prepared by God that she should feed her there, that they should feed her there 1,260 days. And I'm sure you will recognize the 1,260 days. That's been used many, many times. The 3.5 years, meaning that indefinite time period, but not complete, not perfect, not full, but just partial. There was a partial time that this was going to happen. A temporary, incomplete amount of time. And again, the woman has fled into the wilderness. The woman still represents God's people, but now she's representing those people in the first century. God's people, still God's people. But God's people there in that time. And what is she done? She's fled into the wilderness. Why? Because God has a place prepared for her that she should be fed there. Not literally, not physically fed. She doesn't need food and water. What does she need? Oh, protection and shelter and care and concern. That's what she needs. And that, of course, is what she gets because she is God's people. And that description that John used, a woman fleeing into the wilderness, that's been used a lot. Remember, Moses fled into the wilderness. God took care of him for a long time before he was ready to lead His people out of Egypt. Elijah fled into the wilderness. Joseph and Mary fled into Egypt. There seems like that's always been part of God's plan at different times, the fleeing. And so there we see the woman fled into the wilderness, is where God has led her to prepare or to take care of, protect her. And that's where we end. The activity intensifies. This is an intense chapter. We see this huge battle. Great red dragon couldn't kill the child. Tried to. Thought he had several times. Satan thought he had killed the Messiah several times. Thought He had stopped it. He didn't. Messiah carried out God's will perfectly. Satan didn't even know that the Messiah had to die. So Satan was actually fulfilling God's will by having Jesus crucified on the cross. That was God's plan. That goes all the way back to Genesis 3, verses 15 and 16, doesn't it? I mean, that goes back a long, long ways. That warfare between Jesus and Satan that's depicted there in Genesis. And Jesus won. No wonder Satan is angry. And you really see Satan's anger intensify in the rest of chapter 12 and into chapter 13 and into chapter 14. Satan is angry. So God, through John, is wanting the people in the first century, remember, it's written for them primarily, to understand that just because Christ has beaten Satan, there's still going to be suffering and there's still going to be persecution. Why? Because Satan is still loose and he's still deceitful and he still has power and he still has authority. He's crafty and he's cunning and he's going to cause people to persecute those Christians. But know that God is going to take care of it. First of all, God's going to bring down the Roman government, their immediate persecutors. God is going to bring them down. They'll be destroyed and there'll never be a Roman Empire again. Know that first. And second of all, God says, even if you have to give up your life, know that there's a crown of righteousness left for you. Your reward, your crown of victory, because you've been faithful. And that's why these first 6 verses of Revelation chapter 12 should be so important to those people in the first century, but also to us, because the principle is still the same. All He asks us to do is be faithful. That's it. Be faithful. He doesn't ask us to do great and mighty works or miraculous things. He doesn't ask those type of things. He doesn't ask us to fill great auditoriums and great arenas with thousands and tens and hundreds of thousands of people. He doesn't ask us to do that. He asks us to do one thing, be faithful. That's what He asks. He says, if you do that, crown of righteousness is left for you. And that's the same thing today. Enter the race legally and then remain faithful. That's what He asks. So the question is, have you entered the race lawfully, legally, through that new birth, through that baptism for your sins, and have you been faithful? Those are the questions before you. If you need to respond tonight, I encourage you to come as we sing this song.